Hey guys, this is a re-upload of an old morning video I made about a year ago. I find that the many things I discussed in this topic remain relevant on top of the fact that it also helps us get a good perspective into the psychology of the typical Wall Street banker and why it is that they act and behave in an erratic and such destructive manner. Hope you all like this short video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments at the end. Hey guys, hope you are all having a great morning. Today, we are going to talk about everyone's favorite topic these days, psychopaths. The endless fascination in modern society to people who exhibit a complete lack of remorse seems to attract a lot of interest in knowing what it is that make these people tick. Antisocial personality disorder is a very complex classification in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and no single video can do you true justice in fully understanding this highly controversial phenomenon. However, a look to understand the attraction of psychopaths to Wall Street has a much smaller and compact answer that can indeed be addressed. Today we will attempt to answer why it is that psychopaths are so drawn to Wall Street, why they succeed in this cutthroat and hostile environment, and clarify some of the most common misunderstandings we hold. For the well-educated in this subject, some of the topics and answers I will put in display will definitely come at odds with some of your understandings of the subject at hand. Keep in mind that I will be referencing research done about a handful of psychopaths who have had successfully climbed the corporate ladder on Wall Street, and that some of the conclusions here might not necessarily reflect what you yourself have come to acknowledge as true of the human condition. Regardless, I urge you to broaden your mind a bit and try to be a bit open-minded. Psychopathy is a topic I have heavily researched and written many papers about in college. I don't consider myself a leader in topic, but I consider myself well-versed on the matter at hand. I want to thank Ronald Shahoudan, Sam R.O., Mike Watson, and Maya Shalovitz for their input in this topic, which helped me structure the format of this short video. Before we start, let me quickly state that I am not a financial advisor, and that all content discussed in this channel is simply information gathered that I deem important for people to know, so that they can make informed decisions. All efforts are aimed to better understand the nature of the current market in anticipation of the greatest squeeze in financial history. Let's get started. The Western world has grown fascinated with psychopaths over the last couple of years. We have traded much of our free time obsessing over TV shows, movies, and even music that portray characters or perspectives from the shoes of someone who seems to lack the most fundamental trait that makes people human. The lack of empathy and conscience is always the staple of many famous characters. We as a society have even come to respect such qualities, regarding them as a necessary evil to get things done in many cases. The truth is not that different in the real world, at least the world of Wall Street. During the 2008 market crash, we got a glimpse into the attitudes of the people who work for the biggest financial firms in the world, and what we got was a full act of callousness towards all victims that were financially ruined by the greed of many of the people on top. Scientific literature has quoted research data that suggests that 10% of the people in the financial service industry meet enough of the criteria to be diagnosed as psychopathic, but a psychotherapist who actually practices his work at Wall Street actually says these figures are rather conservative. Sherry DeCoveney described financial psychopaths as thrill-seeking individuals who lack empathy, don't care about what others think, are charming towards people they see as beneficial or important to sweep off their feet, are intelligent and work for long-term goals, and most importantly, have an array of experiences that have made them experts at lying and manipulating others. But if the work by psychological and behavioral finance training Market Psych is to be noted, some of these traits also predict success on Wall Street. In order for us to truly understand and magnify the implications that this conveys, we should first define psychopathy first. Psychopathy is a psychological condition based on well-established diagnostic criteria. The real psychological and medical term for this condition is antisocial personality disorder. There is often a lot of debate between sociopaths and psychopaths, with multiple groups differentiating over whether the diagnosis originates as a genetic defect or if the environment in which we live molds us into becoming people that have partial or total disregard for others and the rule of law. The origins of what makes people psychopathic is very interesting, but for the sake of the video, we are going to skip it and just define psychopathic behavior as that which include glibness and superficial charm, conning and manipulative behavior, a notable lack of remorse and empathy, refusal to take responsibility for one's behavior, and an inclination to lying and cheating, and a consistent and habitual history of breaking rules. Using diagnostic criteria, researchers estimate 1% of all Americans to meet the qualifications of psychopathy, which should really take you aback when you consider the research done in Wall Street tallies the number of psychopaths working in the finance industry at 10% minimum. The odds just increase when considering the competitive advantage that some of their characteristics grant them, including the willingness to take risks. By mistake, psychopathy is often that is regarded as a black or white issue. Either you are psychopathic or you aren't, which is a huge mistake that should be addressed by researchers and psychologists. Psychopathic behavior, like all others including autism, exists within a continuum, but that's beside the case for the concern of this video. Now let's dive into some really eye-opening research. A recent set of experiments where researchers observed drivers at an intersection found that people who tended to drive fancy cars were more likely than those driving cars with less economic status to cut others off. They tended to fail to stop for pedestrians at crosswalks or even signal. These same researchers also found in a subsequent experiment that wealthier people were more likely to cheat at a gambling game, even when it meant taking candy from children. These experiments were incredibly careful in the way they were constructed. The research produced concluded that unethical behavior wasn't linked to being wealthy, but rather to how much people believed that greed was good, a view that correlates highly with wealth. It goes to show that even poor people behaved just as bad as the rich when they were primed to believe that selfish, greedy behavior was condoned and acceptable. Other research has shown that just being in the mere presence of visible wealth reduces the likelihood of people sharing. If you are wrinkled enough, you know exactly where I am going with this research. What I am conveying is that Wall Street that will hire individuals based on how psychopathic they are. Instead, Wall Street is the perfect form of an environment that rewards and attracts those that want or psychopathic and those that have it ingrained in themselves to need to belong to the higher class. An ambitious person who might come from a household where he was taught to be ambitious but not cross certain moral lines will essentially be cloned into behaving like a psychopath if he is to work at Wall Street longer than a day. The culture fostered in this competitive environment is cutthroat, and you will have to make certain, if not all, moral compromises to succeed, even if you are at odds with yourself when you look in the mirror. Greg Smith, a man who was an executive director at Goldman Sachs, wrote a pretty scathing op-ed where he excoriated the firm due to its greedy values. He even said that firm promoted ripping their clients off, which shouldn't be a surprise to us given all we have learned and endured these past couple of months, but it does raise eyebrows when it comes from someone who quit a high-level position at the firm. In a portion of all that he wrote, Smith said, and I quote, "These days the most common question I get from junior analysts about derivatives is, how much money did we make off the client? And T bothers me every time I hear it, because it is a clear reflection of what they are observing from their leaders about the way they should behave." Now project 10 years into the future. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that the junior analyst sitting quietly in the corner won't exactly turn into a model citizen when he hears their own bosses referring to their very own clients as Muppets, which is a derogatory term used at Goldman Sachs referring to their very own clients, or when they use expressions like, ripping their eyeballs out. My point, again, is to reinforce that much of the psychopathic tendencies we are seeing from Wall Street are incredibly contagious, and that is a huge problem we are going to have to contend with when we approach subjects of what should or shouldn't happen in a society. We often get to pick our leaders, and we pick up on their values and mirror their behaviors. Since I think I have done a good job as discrediting the idea that Wall Street goons are all psychopaths, let's actually look into some studies that go show the brash impact that the psychopathic leaders have on young juniors starting out. Nearly a quarter of all male brokers in Wall Street are clinically depressed, which is compared with the 7% for the general male population. Bankers, according to research, are very prone to insomnia, alcoholism, heart palpitations, eating disorders and explosive temper. Because of these problems, in extreme cases, we see that many people tend to become compulsive gamblers, which actually aligns with the way Wall Street made their bets on meme stocks. They literally made bets they could not make good on when they went wrong, and are now trying to hide the books and manipulate the prices to try to prevent the unpreventable. An appetite for risk is a very positive trait to have when you work at Wall Street for sure, but when the person making such bets makes them because they have a series of bad habits, have depression and other mental illnesses, things change. These problems go above casinos, and start reflecting on their job, which is why Wall Street firms are always on the headlines for being caught committing forgery, fraud, theft, embezzlement, Ponzi schemes and many other notable crimes. So where do we go from here? Well, I think talking about these problems, talking about the toxic culture of Wall Street and bringing a spotlight to the true factors causing and enabling criminal behavior is necessary in order to bring long-lasting change. I don't think everyone working at Wall Street is psychopathic, and the people who exhibit psychopathic traits should not be colloquially compared to the Ted Bundy of money. I think a re-examination of the what is psychopathic needs to be done with proper re-evaluation, and I think the real cause of malpractice at Wall Street is because there is so little oversight by authorities that it has no longer become the goal for firms to make good on their deals with partners. Instead, it has become the bottom-of-the-barrel type of assortment where criminals act criminally against everyone to get a dime because the order of law is absent. This will, in time as data suggests, turn more people into criminals because, like I said, psychopathic tendencies tend to be contagious. To survive, you will be forced to do some things you may not like, and in Wall Street, the benchmark for amoral actions keeps being pushed more and more. And that's all I have to say in this matter. I look forward to making more psychological-based videos on this subject matter in the future, so let me know what you guys thought of this video in the comments below. With that said, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Come check out my Discord linked in the description and comments below, and have a great rest of your day. To the moon.